What are unethical practices schools use? My daughter's best friend was running track, and the coaches were yelling at her to run more laps. She told them her legs were hurting really bad, so they yelled at her and told her to run another lap. She started crying because of the pain and ended up falling and breaking both kneecaps. As she laid there screaming, the coaches didn't even come to help her. One of the kids called 911, and when they showed up, the coaches acted like they didn't know what to do with the situation. To make it worse, my daughter was on the volleyball and track team, and they tried to do the same thing to her. But I went up to the school and I went off on the principal and coaches about pushing the kids too hard, just so the coaches could win their games. I sent my daughter to a rehab for her leg issues, and they said her legs were stressed and the coaches were overworking her. So I will be taking this up with the school superintendent. I've never understood this about high school coaches, or just coaches in general. Don't you realize if you break your players, they can't play anymore, regardless of how much you train them? Just really strange for people in a sports-focused field to not understand anything about physical health, or at least less than they should. A pretty infuriating one to start out with, and I'm pretty sure it's only going to get worse from here. Story 2. This is at a university level. Say you're a grad student who just secured an opportunity to travel internationally with a university funding your research. You put in a travel request with a suggested travel and lodging budget that gets approved within your funding. You, the grad student, still have to front the money, no matter how much it is, and reimbursement can take 3 weeks to 3 months, depending on how much pressure the finance office is under, who operates on a first-in, first-out basis. So you secured this wonderful grant for thousands of dollars, making no/little money as a grad student. Maybe you're even a fully funded student paying no tuition. You still may be too poor to actually conduct the research you were brought there to do. Story 3. I had a student who showed up and never did work in my class. The principal asked me to change his F to a 75. I emailed back, explaining that the student never made an effort or anything. He told me to be a part of the team and do as I was told. I was only a second-year teacher and was afraid of losing my job, so I obliged. Same principal a couple years later. We had a very large student, and as she walked down the bus ramp one day, some boys called out the bus window the filthy things they wanted to do to her while also calling her fat. I wrote them up and chewed them out. When the principal read the referral, he simply said, "Boys will be boys," and tore up the referral. To this day, I wish I would have asked him what he would have done if that was one of his daughters, but I was just so shocked. It still makes my blood boil. Story 4. Making school start at 7 a.m. and the bus route comes by your house before 6:30 a.m. So you have to get up around 5:30 to 6 every morning. Then say you have an extracurricular activity that takes at least 2 hours, but if it's a sports game, it's probably closer to 4 hours. Then let's say you have a test tomorrow as well as some homework, so you study/work for at least 2 hours. At this point, you have spent well over half your day doing school-related activities. If you want to get a full 8 hours of sleep, which is unlikely, that leaves you with about 2 hours of free time per day, a good chunk of which is probably spent eating a meal, showering, getting ready for the next day, etc. And then people are surprised when teenagers are always tired, depressed, anxious, etc. Schools are screwed up. Really, school starting that early is just a dumb idea. In non-North American countries, a lot of them start school later and have better results for it. Although it's a hard thing to measure, granted. But seriously, people developing need their sleep. It's important. Story 5. When I was in school, they still could revoke bathroom breaks, and some teachers still did when they made it illegal to ban them. Additionally, in my time, for an entire year, either 7th or 8th grade, I only had 1 hour of recess in my entire time. Because my special ed teacher felt that recess, which was mandatory by law, by the way, was a distraction. So what she would do is punish us so we couldn't do it. This caused a lot of stress and trauma, and she even prohibited bathroom breaks. Looking back, I wish my parents sued. Edit. My school was super small and bunched together, so we shared recess/breaks with lower grades. Not even joking, we had like 30 students. Story 6. Having worked in a private school for 16 years, I have so many answers for this, but I'll limit them to the following. 1. Stating in the shiny brochure given to parents that any possession or use of drugs means instant expulsion, and then allowing students caught with the drugs to return after a 2-week suspension. The only kid at my former workplace who was expelled over drugs had it happen because they stole the money they used to buy them. 2. Telling students that if they defended themselves from local bullies, they would be suspended. This rule was dropped after a student ended up being pushed into a river after having their nose broken. 3. Letting students sleep in dorms where the walls were damp and riddled with mold because there was no money in the budget for repairs, while also finding the funds to do a full refurb on the toilets in the school auditorium right before the visit of a member of the royal family. 4. treating male and female students differently. Case in point, a female student caught performing oral on a male student was moved to a new school, while the boy was allowed to remain where he was. That last one has always perplexed me, to be honest. Anytime stuff like that comes up, whether it's an intimate sort of scandalous thing or whatever, it seems to be that the girls or women involved face way harsher punishment. Like the guys just couldn't resist themselves or something stupid. If you're gonna punish them both. If you're not, don't. Just keep it consistent. It's stupid. I am surprised that the school outright told students that they would be suspended if they defended themselves from bullies. The schools I know of at least pretended to keep it kind of case by case. The zero tolerance thing on fighting back, it's just, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. I don't know what the alternative is, but I don't think that that is the answer. Story 7. I thought it was pretty weird that 5th to 8th grade at my school didn't have any bathrooms at all. Also, when I was younger, a mentally disabled kid intimately assaulted me. I screamed and the kid started crying and told the teacher I wouldn't be his friend. And I ended up getting yelled at and the teacher said I was being snotty. I got into trouble for making him cry and he didn't know any better. So I wasn't allowed to scream or yell to the teacher no matter what those kids did to me. Yeah, I really hope it has changed since then. Story 8. Not so much a school problem, but kind of related. When I was in 1st grade, a couple of 3rd graders cornered me and started saying things like, "Your mom doesn't love you and will abandon you at school," which isn't so bad, but 6-year-old me was devastated. I told my teacher that I was being bullied at recess and she asked what grade the bullies were in. I didn't know at the time and guessed that they were in 2nd. She pretty much responded, "I highly doubt that any of them would do that, but I'll look into it." A little while later, she approached me and told me to stop lying. Story 9. UK here. Maybe not quite on the same track as some of the answers, but basically schools forcing university as the only option after leaving school. Never mind college, apprenticeships, going straight into a job, etc. They don't want to hear about it unless it's a university. I've even seen schools making students pay and apply for university even when they've got offers at college or accepted an apprenticeship. I presume it's because the more students that get offered a place at university, then the better the stats are. And that seems to be a huge focus these days, unfortunately. Story 10. Oh my word, so many to choose from. Here's a short list. 1. Segregating special education students into what are called skin rooms, SCIN. These are special classes with interrogation rooms. The idea is that the student has a home base and can receive instruction from his or her special ed teacher on difficult subjects, and then be integrated into the regular workflow of school for the rest of the classes. How it actually works is they keep these special ed kids in there all the time, and they let them out for phys ed or sometimes lunch, if they don't have their own lunch period, or classes that can't be taught in a special ed room like the arts. You will usually find these classrooms tucked away by the boiler room or in a basement if your school has one, and otherwise out of the regular flow of school traffic. And 2. Zero tolerance policies. They encourage kids to inflict higher levels of harm since the consequences will be the same. Why shouldn't they beat the absolute crap out of the other kid? The street cred alone is worth it. Story 11. Assigning 300 problems of math homework every night that take 5 to 10 minutes to write out each. On top of that, teachers don't coordinate, so they all decide to give 1 to 3 hours of homework per night and somehow expect students to complete it all and not be sleep deprived when they come in the next day. Also punishing the victims of bullying when they fight back. Seriously, may the fleas of 1,000 camels feast upon you for the rest of your days. The homework one is tough if you're in a bigger high school at least, because they have a lot of students and a lot of different classes. Like a bigger high school might have 3 or 4, probably more math classes of the same grade, and as such it becomes hard for them to coordinate homework. If we're talking elementary or middle school though, absolutely agree. Even if they are bigger, I think it's important for those kids to not be absolutely swamped. Kids need free time. I think that's underestimated a lot. Story 12. No repercussions for teachers. USA. For example, in the 7th grade, I had a math teacher with very little patience. Math has always been my weakest subject and an insecurity for me as long as I can remember. So I asked a lot of questions because I wanted to do well and actually learn. The defining moment that hurt and still sticks with me to this day 15 years later was when I took a math test. This teacher told me because I got a low score, I would never amount to anything in my life. Literally a 12-year-old kid. Who the hell does that? All that happened was a parent-teacher conference and a week away from her class. Some people do not deserve to teach. Narrator's commentary. Hell yeah, OP. I absolutely agree some people do not deserve to teach. I bet if teaching as a profession were more well-respected or paid better, we would get some more quality teachers. Instead, this is what we're left with some of the time. I'm sorry you got told that, OP. It's not true at all if you do poorly in school in general, but one subject that you're going to do poorly in life. There are a lot of ways to navigate this world. Math isn't the only one. Story 13. On what was probably my first week of secondary school, I was walking out when someone I barely knew passed me a tie he had stolen from someone else and ran off, soon followed by the other guy. Not being involved, I shrugged, put the tie on a railing, and walked off. Somehow, I was the one that got into trouble because the tie was lost. Another thing that happened. I didn't do PE due to a disability. And one day, the girls' coach, a man, pushed me against a wall, somehow offended that I didn't do PE, and said if I were in his classes, he would make me do 100 push-ups. I said, you teach girls, though. And he went into the girls' changing rooms. Pretty sure he didn't get fired, even though I brought it up to the front desk. Man was a frickin' weirdo. And even without our interaction, he probably shouldn't have gone into the girls' changing rooms, in which I'm like 80% sure someone was there. I ended up being forced out of the school because people kept trying to beat me, the disabled kid, up, and didn't like it when I punched them back. They remained, but I was classed as troubled for fighting so often, despite the fact I was fighting off people who would either try to fight me or feel me up for God knows what reason. Entire school must have been full of jerks and closeted lads. Story 14. Holding your records and diploma because your parents are behind in payments. I went to a very good but expensive private school, which my parents would consistently pay when I was very young but struggled after 2008. When they'd be behind in payments, the school would hold my grades sheet from my parents, so I could never see the comments my teachers would have about me. Finally, at my graduation ceremony, I couldn't have access to my diploma nor my grades, which I needed to complete my college dossier, until my parents paid what they owed to the school. Of course, people should pay their dues, but taking it up with the students made me feel very bad. Story 15. Schools reward students who are badly behaved and completely forget about the students who are always well behaved. An example from my school. There's a small group that the school has set up for the badly behaved kids. The goal of this group is to target the bad behavior. They then let each kid in this group choose something they want up to the price of £100, and if they were well behaved for the term, they would get that present. Obviously, most of those kids made conscious efforts to assure they get those presents. While on the other hand, you have the other 90% of students who are well-behaved and well-mannered every day who got a small chocolate bar and a well-done certificate. So the moral of the story is you can earn £300 a year by being badly behaved or get a bar of chocolate every year for being well-behaved. It's so messed up. You know, I actually think this one's kind of tough, because I see why they would do that to try to improve behavior. Rewards have been proven to at least encourage a certain behavior. And I mean, from the sounds of it, if they actually get the prizes, then it works, I think. But it's true, the well-behaved students feel like they're kind of being punished or at least missing out for not misbehaving, which is very strange. I don't really have even a proposition on how to fix this kind of thing. Story 16. I used to do IT for K-12, and some of the stuff I've seen/reported. First one that comes to mind. This was a severely small district. I want to say there were 300 to 400 students max. One student had a severe mental illness and no one working there was equipped to care for/teach a child with those disabilities. He was extremely violent. They built a room inside of a classroom that they could lock him into that had padded walls and stuffed animals and stuff inside. So he would throw himself around the room screaming and kicking but wouldn't actually physically harm himself or others. I cannot believe that was legal. Had another kid with autism. He was in a standard class. He would sleep pretty much all day in class. I once overheard a teacher's aide asking him a question, and the teacher said, "Don't waste your time on him, he's a lost cause." This school district also practiced corporal punishment. I once witnessed the middle school principal threaten to paddle a 13-year-old girl who was being disrespectful. The girl laughed and said, "You think threatening to hit me scares me? I get worse at home." Well, that last sentence kind of broke my heart. What a surprise, though. Beating children makes them behave poorly. No one could have seen this coming. I totally thought that a good smacking was the best way to get a child to behave. Surely there haven't been numerous studies about this. Story 17. Not the worst by any means, just unethical and annoying. Employment numbers. My college bragged that 90% of graduates got jobs. They imply that it's jobs in their field, but the number includes any job. I had to take a manual labor job right out of college to pay my bills, not what I went to school for. That counted. So did my friends who had to take call center jobs. It also means that apparently 10% of graduates aren't even employable. I've seen other schools brag about similar stats. Story 18. Most, if not all, comments are unethical practices schools do that affect kids. But there are plenty of unethical practices that affect teachers as well. As with all things, it depends where in the world you live, of course. My wife is an elementary school teacher, and here are a few things that come to mind. They get paid 35 hours a week, but that's the hours they're at the school. However, they have nowhere near enough free time to prepare their classes and exams, or grade exams and homework. That all has to be done at home, unpaid. A lot, and I mean a lot, of required material comes out of their pockets. They have an ever so tiny budget every year for material that isn't even close to being enough. Everything else has to be purchased with their own money. Even at school, if they print/copy more than X pages, nowhere near enough by the way, they have to pay for the extra pages. This is more of a COVID-specific thing. But in Quebec, due to the explosion of COVID cases, they decided to have Zoom classes until the 17th of January. In the same announcement, the government made it very clear that anyone who can work from home should do so. Next day, my wife gets a message from her school telling her she'll have to do her Zoom classes from the school. Go figure. More specific to my wife's school, though I have no doubts it happens in many other schools as well. The more senior teachers have a lot of influence on how the students are split into the different classes, which often results in them taking all the easy students and leaving the more junior teachers with the difficult ones, rather than try and split them more evenly. Story 19. Pass kids who can't do grade level work. This is required where I live until grade 9, age 14 or so. We're not allowed to hold non-performing kids back. Can't spell your own first name at age 13? Oh, congratulations, you move on to high school. I get it. If the kid is an IEP/has a disability and will never be able to complete graduation requirements, but signing up your kid for grade 8, having them attend 3 weeks of school, then taking them on holiday overseas for the remainder of the school year, like what the hell? How is peer promotion preparing kids to learn harder/more complex material? Sorry, I love my grade 9 students, but the number of them who get to my class unable to capitalize, write a coherent sentence, or know that it's should've, not should-of, is maddening. This is absurd. Like, it was a little absurd that my middle school, like until grade 9, I didn't have homework ever. That was kind of goofy. I mean, I liked it, but I see why that would not be excellent. But to not be able to hold kids back if they are clearly not doing it, yeah, I can't say I'm on board with that one. Story 20. I'm not sure if it would be considered unethical, but I've always been against homework. You make kids sit in various rooms learning 4 to 8 different subjects a day, and each teacher will send them home with additional work to do where they will spend another 1 to 4 hours, sometimes more, doing that schoolwork. That will burn some people out quick as hell. As an adult working 12 hours, whether it's in front of a computer or on my feet, it's tiring. And I'm not even using my brain as hard as some of these kids. I 100% believe in education for kids. My generation isn't going to be able to fix what's happening in the world, but the very least we can do is set up the next one for success. But I feel that sometimes we need to rework the education system, pay teachers a better wage all year, talking about US schools, so they're not working 2 jobs to survive, in addition to teaching them to be successful in life as opposed to being able to pass a test so the school can get more money. Would you look at that? I talk about homework and the very next one mentions it for the first time. To clarify my position though, I don't think that schools should have like 4 hours of homework. I think depending on grade level, you should like work up a bit maybe. I don't know. I feel like a 12th grader having 1 hour to 2 hours of homework at night, most nights, not every night, is probably fine. I would probably not like it, but I think it's good to get that working at home because you're going to need it for university and stuff if that's what you choose to do. It's hard to say though, because I also understand the arguments against homework, at least more towards the younger age spectrum. Burnout is a very good point though. Kids can burn out just like adults, and in fact, they're probably more prone to and just not even know it. And if this thread has taught you anything, it should be that the education system is screwed up. At least in North America/the US. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed the stories or got infuriated at them and want to do something. I don't know. I hope you felt something. And I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one.